The evening rush at Bellini's was in full swing. The clinking of glasses mixed with the hum of conversation as Maya Reynolds balanced 3 plates along her arm. She moved with practiced ease between the tables, her black uniform blending into the dimly lit background of the restaurant. The smells of garlic, basil, and freshly baked bread filled the air as she delivered a steaming plate of fettuccine to table 7. "Careful, the plate is hot," Maya said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The customer barely looked up from his phone, giving a slight nod of acknowledgement. This was how it had been for 3 years now. Maya was good at being invisible while being everywhere at once. She remembered who needed refills, which table wanted extra parmesan, and who was celebrating a birthday. She was the kind of server that restaurant owners dreamed of, reliable, efficient, and drama-free. At 26, Maya had settled into the rhythm of restaurant life. Wake up, put on the uniform, serve tables, count tips, go home, sleep, repeat. The grand piano that sat in the corner of Bellini's dining room was just another piece of furniture to clean around during her closing duties. It gleamed under the soft spotlights, but Maya rarely gave it more than a passing glance. "Order up for table 12, called out Daphne, the head chef, her voice cutting through the kitchen noise. Maya hurried to pick up the order, skillfully arranging the plates on her tray. As she pushed through the swinging kitchen doors, she caught sight of Antonio, the regular pianist, talking to Mr. Bellini near the entrance. Antonio looked pale, his hands gesturing apologetically while Mr. Bellini's face grew increasingly concerned. Maya delivered the food to table 12, making sure everyone had what they needed before heading to the drink station. She couldn't help but overhear the conversation between her boss and the pianist. "The doctor says it's tendonitis. I can barely move my wrist without pain," Antonio explained, his Italian accent thicker than usual due to his distress. Mr. Bellini ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "But tonight, we have the Henderson party coming in for their anniversary. They specifically mentioned looking forward to the music, and I'm sorry. I need at least a week of rest, maybe more," Antonio replied, clutching his wrist. Mr. Bellini nodded in resignation. "Go home and heal. We'll figure something out." Maya watched as Antonio left, and Mr. Bellini's worried gaze swept across the restaurant. Their eyes met briefly before Maya turned away, pretending to be busy with the drink orders. The piano music was a signature part of the Bellini's experience. Without it, the restaurant felt incomplete, like pasta without sauce. The evening progressed, and the absence of music became increasingly noticeable. Conversation seemed louder, the clattering of cutlery more intrusive. Several customers asked about the pianist, and Maya found herself explaining the situation repeatedly as she served their meals. During a rare moment of downtime, Maya leaned against the bar, watching the empty piano bench. The light above it created a perfect spotlight on the keys, as if waiting for someone to step in. "Shame about Antonio," said Luke, the bartender, as he polished a wine glass. "Mr. Bellini tried calling for a replacement, but nobody's available on such short notice." Maya nodded, her eyes still fixed on the piano. There was something about the way it sat there, patient and full of potential. "You play?" Luke asked, noticing her stare. Maya hesitated. "Used to a long time ago. No kidding? Any good?" She shrugged, uncomfortable with the question. "It doesn't matter now." Before Luke could press further, Maya spotted a customer signaling for her attention. Relieved for the distraction, she hurried over to table 15. The Henderson party arrived at 8, a group of 8 people led by an older couple celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. Maya guided them to the large round table that had been specially prepared for them, complete with a bottle of champagne on ice. "Mr. Bellini mentioned there would be piano music," Mrs. Henderson said, looking around with slight disappointment. "I apologize, but our pianist is unwell tonight," Maya explained, feeling a pang of sympathy for Mr. Bellini, who was watching anxiously from across the room. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself making more trips past the piano than necessary. Each time her steps slowed just a little, memories she had tucked away began to surface. Her mother saving for years to buy a second-hand upright piano, the hours of practice after school, the thrill of her first recital at 12. She remembered the scholarship offer that had come during her senior year of high school, a full ride to study music at the state university. And then she remembered her mother's diagnosis just 2 weeks later, and how quickly dreams of music school had been set aside for the reality of hospital bills and part-time jobs. By the time her mother recovered, The scholarship had gone to someone else, and Maya had already started working full-time. Music became something from her past, like childhood toys stored in an attic. The restaurant was beginning to empty as the night went on. The Henderson party was enjoying their dessert, their laughter a bit subdued in the quiet restaurant. Mr. Bellini kept glancing their way, clearly worried about their experience. During her break, Maya found herself standing by the piano. Without thinking, she reached out and pressed a single key, so softly that the sound barely traveled. The note hung in the air like a question. "You know how to play?" Mr. Bellini's voice startled her. He had approached without her noticing. Maya withdrew her hand quickly. "Just a little. Nothing special." Mr. Bellini looked at her curiously. "A little is better than nothing tonight." Maya's heart raced. "Oh no, I couldn't. It's been years and I never played professionally." "The Hendersons are good customers. Their anniversary is important." He gestured toward the celebrating couple. "Just a song or two? Something simple?" Maya looked at the piano keys, feeling a mix of longing and fear. Her fingers itched to touch them properly, to see if they still remembered what to do. But what if she failed? What if she embarrassed herself in front of everyone? "I don't know," she said hesitantly. Mr. Bellini's phone rang, pulling his attention away. "Think about it," he said before answering the call and walking toward his office. Maya returned to her tables, but the piano kept drawing her gaze. During her next trip to the kitchen, she passed Daphne, who was taking a rare breather outside the kitchen doors. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Daphne commented, noting Maya's distracted expression. "Mr. Bellini asked if I could play the piano tonight," Maya admitted. Daphne's eyebrows shot up. "You play piano? How did I not know this after 3 years?" Maya shrugged. "It never came up, and I don't really play anymore." "But you could? Right now?" Daphne pressed. "Maybe. Probably. I don't know," Maya stammered. "It's been so long." Daphne put a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Girl, if you can play, you should play. What's the worst that could happen?" Maya could think of plenty of worst-case scenarios. Forgetting the notes, hitting wrong keys, freezing up entirely. But underneath all that worry was a tiny spark of excitement. What if it went well? What if her fingers still knew what to do? As she delivered the check to a departing couple, Maya overheard Mrs. Henderson speaking to her husband. "It's lovely, but I was looking forward to some music with our anniversary toast," she said softly. The disappointment in the woman's voice echoed something in Maya's own heart. A longing for music that had been silenced for too long. Taking a deep breath, Maya walked over to Mr. Bellini, who was arranging some papers at the host stand. "I'll try," she said simply. His face lit up. "Truly wonderful. Just a song or two, that's all we need." Maya nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. She walked toward the piano, aware of curious glances from the remaining customers. The Henderson party quieted as they noticed her approaching the instrument. She sat down carefully on the bench, adjusting it slightly. The polished keys reflected the soft overhead lighting. Maya placed her hands gently on the keyboard, not pressing down yet, just feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath her fingertips. It had been 7 years since she'd really played. 7 years of telling herself that music was just a childhood dream, something to be remembered but not pursued. 7 years of being just a server, someone in the background of other people's special moments. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She could do this, one song, something simple. Her fingers found the keys for a piece she had played hundreds of times before, a gentle Chopin nocturne that her mother had loved. The first notes were hesitant, slightly unsure, but as the melody began to take shape, something awakened inside her. Her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The restaurant grew quiet as the music filled the space. Maya kept her eyes down, focused on the keys, afraid to look up and see the reactions. She wasn't playing perfectly, there were small mistakes. Hesitations where her memory faltered, but the heart of the music was there, flowing through her fingers and into the room. As the final notes of the nocturne faded, Maya finally looked up. The Hendersons were watching her with warm smiles. Mrs. Henderson had tears in her eyes. Around the restaurant, several customers who had been preparing to leave had paused to listen. "Another," someone called softly, and Maya felt a blush creep into her cheeks. She turned back to the keys and began to play again, this time with more confidence. The music came easier now, like reuniting with an old friend. For the first time in years, Maya felt something shift inside her. A door opening to a part of herself she had locked away. She was still a server at Bellini's. Still wearing the black uniform. Still the same Maya Reynolds who had walked into work that evening. But something fundamental had changed. She wasn't just a server anymore. She was a musician who had found her way back to the keys. The morning after Maya's unexpected piano performance, she woke up feeling different. Sunlight streamed through her apartment blinds as she stared at the ceiling, her fingers twitching slightly as if they were still playing. The memory of last night felt almost like a dream. She rolled over and grabbed her phone, surprised to see a text from Mr. Bellini. "The Hendersons can't stop talking about you. 3 tables asked if you'll play again tonight." Maya sat up, suddenly wide awake. She hadn't considered that people would expect her to play again. Last night was supposed to be a one-time thing, a favor to help out when Antonio couldn't make it. She hadn't planned on becoming the restaurant's entertainment. As she got ready for her morning shift, Maya found herself humming melodies she hadn't thought about in years. Music that had been buried deep inside her was suddenly bubbling to the surface. Her small apartment felt different too, emptier somehow, as if it was missing something she'd only just remembered she needed. In the corner of her bedroom sat a cardboard box she'd never unpacked after her last move. Maya knelt down and opened it, pulling out faded sheet music and dog-eared music books. Her fingers traced the notes on the yellowing pages, and she could almost hear the pieces in her head. "I'm going to be late," she muttered, shoving the music back into the box. But instead of closing it, she pulled out a few sheets and tucked them into her bag. The morning rush at Bellini's was always busy with business people grabbing coffee and quick breakfasts before work. Maya moved through her usual routine, taking orders and delivering plates of eggs and pastries, but everything felt slightly off-kilter, as if she was walking through a familiar room where all the furniture had been shifted an inch to the left. "There she is," called out Luke from behind the bar as Maya entered. "Our hidden talent." Maya felt her cheeks flush as several of her co-workers turned to look at her. Daphne emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Why didn't you ever tell us you could play like that?" Daphne asked, giving Maya a gentle nudge with her elbow. "It wasn't important," Maya replied, tying her apron around her waist. "It's just something I used to do." "Not important?" Luke laughed. "Mr. Bellini said Mrs. Henderson left you a $50 tip just for playing that song on her anniversary." Maya hadn't checked her tips from last night. She'd been so dazed after playing that she'd finished her shift on autopilot and hurried home, her mind still full of music. "The piano's been sitting there collecting dust between Antonio's performances," Daphne said. "You should play more often." Before Maya could respond, Mr. Bellini appeared from his office. His face brightened when he saw her. "Maya, just the person I wanted to see." He gestured for her to follow him, and Maya trailed behind, suddenly nervous. In his office, Mr. Bellini sat behind his desk and folded his hands. "Antonio called this morning. The doctor says he needs at least 2 weeks of rest for his wrist." Maya nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I was wondering, hoping actually, that you might consider filling in for him. Just for the dinner service, of course. You'd still have your regular shifts, but we could arrange for someone to cover your tables while you play." Maya's heart raced. "Mr. Bellini, I'm not a professional pianist. Last night I was just helping out. And you helped wonderfully," he said, smiling. "The customers loved it. 3 people made reservations specifically asking if the server who plays piano would be performing again." "They did?" Maya couldn't hide her surprise. "I can pay you extra, of course. Not as much as Antonio. He's been with us for years, but a fair amount on top of your regular pay and tips." Maya thought about her tiny apartment, the stack of bills on her counter, and the student loans she was still paying off years after dropping out of community college. Extra money would definitely help, but the thought of playing in front of a restaurant full of people every night made her palms sweat. "Can I think about it?" she asked. Mr. Bellini nodded. "Of course, but not too long. I need to make arrangements if you say no." As Maya left his office, she noticed the piano sitting in the corner of the restaurant. In the morning light, without the evening's dim atmosphere, it looked more intimidating. The idea of sitting there with all eyes on her made her stomach twist into knots. Throughout her shift, customers who had been there the night before kept asking if she would play again. Each time Maya gave a non-committal smile and said she wasn't sure. By lunchtime, she was exhausted from the questions and the expectation hanging in the air. During her break, Maya found herself drawn to the piano again. The restaurant was quieter now, with just a few late lunch customers lingering over coffee. She sat down at the bench and placed her hands on the keys without pressing them, feeling the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. "You should do it," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Rose, one of the older servers who had worked at Bellini's for nearly a decade. Rose was wiping down a nearby table, her experienced hands moving quickly and efficiently. "I don't know," Maya replied. "Playing for fun is one thing, but as a job? I'm not trained for that." Rose shrugged. "Neither was I when I started waiting tables. Sometimes opportunities come along and you either grab them or spend your life wondering what if." Maya pressed a key softly, letting a single note hang in the air. "What if I'm not good enough?" "You were good enough last night," Rose said simply. "And you'll get better with practice. That's how it works with anything worth doing." As Rose walked away, Maya pulled out the sheet music she'd brought from home. It was a piece she'd been working on right before she gave up playing, a challenging Debussy composition that had once been just beyond her reach. She wondered if she could play it now, or if those skills had faded beyond recovery. Maya glanced at her watch. Her break was almost over and the dinner prep would start soon. She carefully folded the music and returned it to her bag, her decision still unmade. The evening shift began like any other, with Maya taking orders and serving food. But there was an energy in the air that felt different. Customers kept glancing at the piano, and Maya felt their eyes following her as she moved between tables. At 7 o'clock, Mr. Bellini approached her. "I need to know, Maya, will you play tonight?" Looking around at the half-full restaurant, Maya saw the Henderson couple had returned, sitting at the same table as the night before. Mrs. Henderson gave her an encouraging smile. Several other tables were occupied by people who had been there for her impromptu performance. Taking a deep breath, Maya nodded. "Just for an hour, and someone needs to cover my tables." Mr. Bellini's face lit up. "Of course. Rose has already offered to take over for you." Maya wasn't surprised. Rose had always been kind to her, showing her the ropes when she first started at Bellini's. It seemed the older server had already known what Maya's decision would be before she made it. "Give me 10 minutes, Maya said, suddenly feeling the need to prepare. In the staff bathroom, Maya splashed water on her face and stared at her reflection. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "It's just playing piano. You've done it before." But it wasn't just playing piano. It was stepping out of the shadows and into the spotlight. It was admitting to herself and everyone else that she was more than just a server, that the dream she'd set aside years ago still lived inside her. Maya pulled her hair out of its practical ponytail, letting it fall around her shoulders. She straightened her black uniform and took one more deep breath before heading back into the restaurant. The piano waited for her, gleaming under the soft lighting. As Maya approached it, conversations quieted. She sat down on the bench, adjusted it slightly, and placed her hands on the keys. This time, she didn't close her eyes. Instead, she looked out at the restaurant, at the faces turned toward her with expectation. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. Then she caught sight of Rose, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. Maya began to play. She started with something simple, a melody that had always comforted her when she was nervous. As the notes filled the room, she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Her fingers moved more confidently across the keys, finding their way home. After the first piece ended, there was a smattering of applause. Maya smiled, feeling a rush of something she hadn't experienced in years, the joy of creating something beautiful and sharing it with others. She moved into another piece, this one slightly more complex. As she played, Maya noticed something strange happening. The usual restaurant sounds, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation, didn't disappear, but they seemed to blend with her music, becoming part of a larger composition. She wasn't separate from the restaurant anymore. She was an essential part of its atmosphere. Time seemed to slip away as Maya lost herself in the music. When she finally paused, she was surprised to realize that more than an hour had passed. The restaurant had filled completely, with people standing near the entrance waiting for tables. Mr. Bellini approached the piano, beaming. "Wonderful, Maya. Simply wonderful. Will you play just a bit more? The guests are..." "Loving it," Maya nodded, surprised by how much she wanted to continue. As she started playing again, she caught sight of a man sitting alone at a small table near the piano. Unlike the other diners, he wasn't eating or talking. He was simply listening, his attention fully focused on her playing. There was something about his posture, the way he tilted his head slightly as she moved through a difficult passage, that made Maya think he understood music differently than the other guests. When she finished the piece, his applause was measured but genuine, and his eyes met hers with what seemed like recognition. As the evening continued, Maya found herself playing for him, challenging herself with more complex pieces, curious about his reaction. Each time she glanced his way, he was watching her hands, studying her technique with an intensity that might have been unnerving if it wasn't so respectful. When she finally finished her impromptu performance, her fingers aching pleasantly from the hours of playing, the mysterious listener approached the piano. "That was remarkable," he said, his voice quiet but clear, "especially for someone who hasn't played regularly in some time." Maya looked up, surprised. "How did you know?" He smiled. "Your technique shows both training and rust, but your musicality—" He paused, searching for the right words. "That's something that can't be taught. You have a gift." Before Maya could respond, he handed her a business card. "My name is Daniel Foster. I teach at the music department at City College. If you're interested in exploring your talent further, I'd be happy to talk." With that, he nodded goodbye and walked away, leaving Maya staring at the card in her hand, her world shifting once again. 3 weeks had passed since Maya first touched the piano at Bellini's, and everything had changed. She still wore the same black uniform and carried the same trays, but now everyone knew her name. Regular customers greeted her with warm smiles and often requested specific songs. Her tip jar next to the piano filled up every night, sometimes containing folded notes with song requests and words of appreciation along with the cash. Maya stared at Daniel Foster's business card for the 20th time as she sat in her car outside City College. She had been putting off this meeting for weeks, making excuses about being too busy or needing more practice. The truth was, she was scared. Meeting with a real music professor meant taking this seriously, admitting to herself that music wasn't just a hobby or a way to earn extra tips. 5 more minutes, she whispered to herself, watching students walk across the campus. Some carried instrument cases, violins, flutes, guitar bags slung over their shoulders. They looked so young, so sure of themselves and their path. Maya felt out of place at 26, coming back to the dream she had abandoned years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Bellini. "Antonio says his wrist is better. He'll be back next week. Let me know if you still want evening piano slots." Maya closed her eyes. Antonio's return meant a decision. Did she want to keep playing at Bellini's? Did she want to become known as the piano server permanently? And what would Professor Foster say about her playing? Would he laugh at her technique, point out all the flaws that came from years without proper training or practice? The clock on her dashboard showed it was time. With a deep breath, Maya grabbed her bag and stepped out of the car. The music building was smaller than she expected, an older structure with tall windows and a slightly musty smell that reminded her of library books. She followed the room numbers until she found 103. Where a handwritten sign read Professor D. Foster, Piano Studio. She knocked softly. "Come in," called a familiar voice. Professor Foster sat at a grand piano much larger and more impressive than the one at Bellini's. The room was simple but warm, with framed music scores on the walls and shelves lined with books and sheet music. "Maya Reynolds," he said, standing to greet her. "I'm glad you decided to come." "Thank you for inviting me," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I wasn't sure if I should. Why not?" he asked, gesturing for her to sit in a chair near the piano. Maya chose her words carefully. "I'm not a student. I haven't played seriously in years. I'm just a server who happens to play piano beautifully," he finished for her. "I've been back to Bellini's twice since that first night. Your playing has improved remarkably even in that short time." Maya felt a flush of pride mixed with embarrassment. "You've been listening to me?" "Of course. When I hear someone with natural talent, I pay attention." He sat back down at the piano bench. "Tell me about your musical background." As Maya described her childhood lessons, her mother's sacrifices to pay for them, and the scholarship she had almost accepted, Professor Foster listened without interrupting. His face remained neutral, but his eyes were kind. "And then you stopped," he said when she finished. "Until 3 weeks ago. Life happened," Maya said with a small shrug. "My mother got sick. Bills piled up. Music seemed like a luxury we couldn't afford." Professor Foster nodded. "And now?" "Now I don't know," Maya admitted. "Playing at Bellini's has been wonderful, but it's not a career. It's just filling in until Antonio comes back." "Is that all you want it to be?" he asked. The question hung in the air between them. Maya thought about how it felt to play again, how time seemed to both stop and speed up when her fingers touched the keys, how the noise of the restaurant faded away until there was only the music. "No," she said finally. "I want more, but I don't know if it's possible." Professor Foster smiled. "That's why I asked you here. I believe it is possible with work and commitment." He turned to face the piano. "Would you play something for me?" "Anything you like," Maya hesitated. Playing in a restaurant was one thing. People were eating, talking, only half listening. Playing for a professional in a quiet room with perfect acoustics was entirely different. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "Good," Professor Foster replied. "Nerves mean you care. Use them." Maya switched places with him at the piano. The keys felt different under her fingers, more responsive, with a depth and resonance the restaurant piano couldn't match. She began with a simple piece, one she knew well, trying to focus on the music rather than the man listening to her. As she played, she became aware of small habits she'd developed, shortcuts and tricks to cover weaknesses in her technique. Under Professor Foster's watchful eye, these seemed more obvious, and she found herself trying to correct them as she went, which only made her playing more uneven. When she finished, she kept her eyes on the keys, afraid to look up. "You're fighting with yourself," Professor Foster said gently. "Half of you is playing from the heart, and half is trying to impress me with technique you haven't practiced in years." Maya nodded, knowing he was right. "Play something else," he suggested. "But this time close your eyes. Don't think about me or about doing it correctly. Just play." Maya took a deep breath and began again, this time with a piece she loved, one that had always spoken to her. She closed her eyes as instructed, letting her fingers find their own way through the familiar melody. As she played, the nervousness faded, replaced by the pure joy of making music. When the final notes faded away, she opened her eyes to find Professor Foster smiling. "That," he said, "is why I asked you here. Most students I teach have technical skills they've spent years developing, but they struggle to find that, what you just did. The emotion, the connection to the music." "But my technique is terrible," Maya protested. "Technique can be taught," he replied. "Passion cannot." He stood up and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. The music department offers scholarships for non-traditional students, people returning to music after time away, or those who never had formal training but show exceptional promise. Maya's heart raced as he handed her the folder. "I couldn't possibly—" "You can," he interrupted firmly. "The spring semester starts in January. That gives you 3 months to prepare for the audition." "Audition?" Maya's voice came out as a squeak. "A formality in your case." "I'm on the committee," he smiled. "You would take classes part-time in the evenings. Many of our non-traditional students maintain their day jobs while studying." Maya flipped through the paperwork, her mind spinning with possibilities. "This is very generous, but think about it," Professor Foster said. "In the meantime, I'd like to offer you some coaching sessions. Informal, no pressure. We can work on rebuilding your technique, preparing for the audition if you decide to apply." "Why?" Maya asked, genuinely confused by his interest. "Why would you do this for me?" Professor Foster was quiet for a moment. 20 years ago, I was a promising young pianist on track for a career as a performer. Then I injured my hand. Nothing as temporary as Antonio's tendinitis. I had to reinvent my relationship with music. He flexed his left hand, and Maya noticed for the first time a slight stiffness to his movements. "I found my path through teaching. Helping others develop their gifts became my way of still making music. When I heard you play, I recognized something special, something that deserves a chance to grow." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," he replied, "and that you'll come back next week for our first session." Maya nodded, clutching the folder to her chest. As she walked back to her car, the campus suddenly looked different. The students didn't seem like strangers anymore, but potential classmates. The building that had intimidated her now felt like a place where she might belong. Her phone buzzed again with another text from Mr. Bellini. Customers asking if you're playing tonight. Can I tell them yes? Maya smiled and typed her reply. Yes. And I'd like to keep some evening slots even after Antonio returns. That night at Bellini's, the restaurant was busier than usual. Word had spread about the server who played piano, and people came specifically to hear her. Maya's hands felt different on the keys, more confident, more purposeful, after her session with Professor Foster. Between sets, she served tables as usual, but everything had shifted subtly. Customers who had barely noticed her before now stopped her to compliment her playing or request songs. Mr. Bellini beamed with pride whenever he introduced her to his friends who came to the restaurant. During her break, Maya stepped outside for some fresh air. Rose followed her, holding out a cup of tea. You've got quite a fan club in there, Rose said, nodding toward the restaurant. Maya wrapped her hands around the warm cup. It's strange. I'm still doing exactly what I've always done, serving food, clearing tables. But now people see me differently. They see you, Rose corrected. The real you, not just the person in the uniform who brings their food. Maya thought about Professor Foster and the scholarship application in her bag. I met with that music professor today, the one who gave me his card, and, Rose prompted, he thinks I should apply for a scholarship. Take classes. He offered to help me prepare, Rose smiled. That sounds like an opportunity. It's scary, Maya admitted. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if you are? Rose countered. What if this is exactly where you're supposed to be? Before Maya could respond, Luke stuck his head out the door. Maya, there's someone here asking for you. Says he saw a video of you playing last week. A video? Maya followed Luke back inside, confused. Near the piano stood a well-dressed man Maya had never seen before. He introduced himself as Richard Wilson, owner of the Blue Note, a popular jazz club downtown. Someone posted a clip of you playing here last Friday, he explained, showing her a phone with a social media post. The video showed Maya at the piano, lost in the music, unaware she was being recorded. It had thousands of views and comments. I had no idea, Maya said, stunned. You've got something special, Richard said. We've had a cancellation this weekend. One of our regular pianists caught the flu. I'd like to offer you a guest spot, just an hour set on Saturday night. Maya felt like the floor was tilting beneath her. The Blue Note? But that's a real music venue. With real musicians, Richard smiled. And now they want to hear you. As he handed her his business card, Maya caught sight of Rose watching from across the room, smiling knowingly. Professor Foster's words echoed in her mind. Technique can be taught. Passion cannot. For the first time since she was 18, Maya allowed herself to truly believe that music might not just be her past, but her future. The Blue Note was nothing like Bellini's, where the restaurant was warm and cozy with soft lighting and the constant hum of conversation. The jazz club was cool and sleek. Blue spotlights cast dramatic shadows across the stage where a gleaming black grand piano waited. Tables crowded close to the stage, filled with people who came specifically for the music, not as a backdrop to their dinner. Maya stood in the back room, peeking through a crack in the door at the gathering crowd. Her hands trembled slightly and she wiped her palms on her new black dress, purchased just for tonight with her piano tips from Bellini's. First time at the Blue Note? Asked a voice behind her. Maya turned to see an older woman with silver-streaked hair adjusting a saxophone strap. She had kind eyes and the relaxed confidence of someone who had been performing for decades. First time playing anywhere real, Maya admitted. I'm just filling in, the woman smiled. Honey, if Richard invited you, you're not just anything. He doesn't offer stage time to people who can't play. She extended her hand. I'm Loretta. I'm on after you with my quartet. Maya. She shook Loretta's hand, grateful for the kindness. I'm terrified. Good, use it. Fear keeps you sharp. Loretta peered through the crack in the door. Full house tonight. Word's gotten around about you. Maya's stomach dropped. About me, how? That video's been making the rounds. Server with hidden talent is a story people love. Loretta adjusted her earrings. Plus, the regular musicians are curious. We want to hear what got Richard so excited. This didn't help Maya's nerves. Playing for restaurant patrons who were focused on their food was one thing. Playing for actual musicians and people who came specifically to judge her skill was entirely different. 5 minutes. Ms. Reynolds, called the stage manager. A young man with a clipboard and a headset. Maya nodded, suddenly unable to speak. She thought of Professor Foster's coaching sessions over the past week, how he'd helped her refine her technique and build a proper set list for tonight. "Remember," he had said, "these people want you to succeed. They're not looking for perfection. They're looking for authenticity." Loretta squeezed her shoulder. "Don't try to impress them with fancy playing. Just tell your story through the music. The rest will take care of itself." With that, she walked away, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and the muffled sounds of the crowd beyond the door. 2 minutes. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought of her mother, who had worked double shifts to pay for her childhood piano lessons. She thought of the scholarship she'd given up, the years spent pushing music aside. She thought of the moment 3 weeks ago when her fingers had first touched the keys at Bellini's, awakening something she'd tried to forget. "Ms. Reynolds, you're on." The stage manager held the door open and Maya walked through it on unsteady legs. The blue lights felt hot on her skin as she crossed to the piano. The crowd's chatter dimmed as she sat down, adjusting the bench to her height. For a terrifying moment, Maya's mind went completely blank. The carefully prepared set list vanished from her memory. Her fingers hovered over the keys, frozen. From a table near the front, she spotted a familiar face, Rose from Bellini's, who had switched shifts to come support her. Next to Rose sat Mr. Bellini himself, beaming with pride. A few tables back, Professor Foster nodded encouragingly. Taking another deep breath, Maya placed her hands on the keys and began to play. She started with a piece she knew by heart, one that had been her mother's favorite. The first few notes were hesitant, but as the melody took shape, something shifted inside her. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into energy that flowed through her fingers into the music. The club fell silent except for the sound of the piano. Maya closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. When she opened them again, she saw something unexpected on the faces watching her. Not judgment or criticism, but connection. People were leaning forward in their seats, some with eyes closed, others watching her hands intently. As she finished the first piece, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. It wasn't polite restaurant applause, it was genuine appreciation. Maya smiled, her confidence growing as she moved into her second piece, this one with more complexity and emotion. Time seemed to both stretch and compress as she played through her set. Each piece felt like a story she was telling, not just to the audience but to herself, the story of who she had been, who she was becoming, and all the years in between. For her final piece, Maya took a risk. Instead of the classical composition she had practiced, she began to improvise, building on a simple melody and letting it evolve. This wasn't something she'd done before, at least not intentionally, but tonight it felt right. Her fingers found patterns and harmonies she hadn't planned, creating something new in the moment. When the final notes faded, there was a beat of complete silence before the room erupted in applause. Maya stood, her legs shaky but her heart full, and bowed. As she looked up, she saw that some people were standing, including Loretta at the back of the room, nodding with approval. Richard Wilson approached the stage, taking the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Reynolds. Her first time at the Blue Note, but I have a feeling it won't be her last." The applause grew louder and Maya felt tears threatening to spill. She bowed once more before making her way off the stage, where Loretta's quartet was preparing to take over. "Didn't I tell you?" Loretta said, giving her a quick hug as they passed. "You didn't just play the piano. You told your story." In the back room, Maya collapsed into a chair, her hands still tingling from playing. The door opened and Rose rushed in, followed by Mr. Bellini and Professor Foster. "You were magnificent," Rose exclaimed, hugging her tightly. Mr. Bellini looked both proud and slightly sad. "Antonia will have to share the piano from now on." "You belong on stage, Maya." Professor Foster simply nodded, his eyes bright. "You've made your decision, I think." Maya knew he was referring to the scholarship application, still sitting half-completed on her kitchen table. After tonight, there was no question. She would finish it tomorrow. Richard Wilson entered last, carrying a glass of champagne for Maya. "Drink this. You've earned it." He waited for her to take a sip before continuing. I'd like to offer you a regular spot. Thursday nights to start. It doesn't pay much, but it's a foot in the door. Maya nearly choked on the champagne. A regular spot? But I haven't. You have now, are. Yet the audience loved you. More importantly, the musicians respected what you did up there. That's not easy to earn. As her friends congratulated her, Maya's phone buzzed with a text. It was from her mother. Wish I could have been there. So proud of you for finding your way back to music. Maya felt tears well up again. Her mother had always believed this day would come, even when Maya herself had given up. The next few days passed in a blur. Maya continued her shifts at Bellini's, but now customers asked for her autograph along with their pasta. She completed the scholarship application and submitted it with Professor Foster's enthusiastic recommendation. She began preparing for her first official set at the Blue Note, practicing late into the night after her restaurant shifts ended. One evening, as she finished playing at Bellini's, Antonio approached the piano. His wrist was healed, and he was scheduled to return to his regular slots the following week. Mr. Bellini tells me we will be sharing the piano now, he said, his Italian accent more pronounced than usual. He shows me the video. You play with much feeling. Maya tensed, unsure if he was upset about sharing his position. Thank you. I hope you don't mind. Antonio shook his head. Music is not meant to be kept to oneself. It is for sharing. He sat beside her on the bench. May I show you something? He began to play, his technique far more polished than Maya's. After a few measures, he nodded for her to join him. Hesitantly, Maya added a harmony to his melody, and soon they were playing together, creating something neither could have made alone. When they finished, Antonio smiled. You see, better together. As he walked away, Maya remained at the piano, thinking about how much had changed in just a month. She had gone from being invisible, just a server moving silently between tables, to being seen and heard. Not just at Bellini's or the Blue Note, but by herself. She had rediscovered a part of herself that had been buried but never truly gone. The restaurant was nearly empty now, the late-night customers finishing their desserts and coffees. Maya began to play one last piece softly, almost to herself. It was the Debussy composition she had pulled from her old box of sheet music, the one that had once been just beyond her abilities. Tonight, it flowed from her fingers as if it had always belonged there, waiting for her to be ready to claim it. From across the room, she caught sight of Mr. Bellini watching her with a bittersweet smile. He had seen her transformation from the beginning, from the nervous server who reluctantly agreed to fill in for one night to the confident musician who now had people coming to hear her play. Maya realized she was standing at a crossroads. The scholarship, if she received it, would mean cutting back her hours at Bellini's. The regular spot at the Blue Note would take her away from some dinner shifts. For the first time in years, she had choices to make, not out of necessity but out of opportunity. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Maya didn't know exactly where this new path would lead, but as her fingers danced across the keys, bringing beauty into the world note by note, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer just a server who happened to play the piano. She was a musician who happened to serve tables for now. 6 months had passed since Maya first sat down at the piano in Bellini's. Spring had given way to summer, and the warm evening air drifted through the open windows of the music building at City College. Maya sat in Professor Foster's studio, her fingers moving rapidly over the keys as she worked through a challenging passage. Better, Professor Foster said, nodding as she finished. Your technique has improved remarkably. Remember to breathe through the difficult parts. You still tend to hold your breath when you concentrate. Maya smiled, flexing her fingers. Old habits. Speaking of which, he said, pulling an envelope from his desk drawer, this came for you today. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she recognized the logo of a prestigious summer music program. She had applied on Professor Foster's recommendation, never expecting to be considered. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and read the letter inside. I got in, she whispered, hardly believing the words. They're offering a partial scholarship. Professor Foster beamed. Congratulations. 6 weeks studying with some of the best teachers in the country. It's an incredible opportunity. Maya read the letter again, her excitement fading as she reached the details. It starts in 3 weeks. I'd have to quit my job at Bellini's and the Blue Note. She looked up at her mentor. I can't afford this even with the partial scholarship. Professor Foster's expression grew thoughtful. There might be a way. The music department has some discretionary funds for promising students. And your Thursday night performances at the Blue Note have gotten quite a following? Perhaps a benefit concert? Maya considered this. Her weekly sets at the jazz club had indeed become popular, with regulars who came specifically to hear her play. Richard had even started recording her performances and featuring clips on the club's social media, expanding her audience beyond those who could attend in person. I don't know if I can ask people for money like that, she said hesitantly. You wouldn't be asking for charity, Professor Foster replied. You'd be offering something valuable, your music, and giving people a chance to support your development as an artist. There's dignity in that exchange. Later that evening, Maya arrived at Bellini's for her shift. Though she still served tables 3 nights a week, her role had evolved. On busy nights, she would serve until the dinner rush ended, then play for an hour before helping with closing duties. Mr. Bellini had adjusted her schedule to accommodate her classes and her Thursday nights at the Blue Note. As she tied on her apron, Rose approached with a concerned expression. Everything okay? Maya asked. You look worried. Rose hesitated. Mr. Bellini just got a call. A restaurant critic is coming tonight. Someone from the City magazine doing a feature on hidden gems in the dining scene. That's good news, isn't it? Maya said, checking her section assignments for the evening. Yes, but... Rose lowered her voice. He specifically mentioned wanting to hear the piano server who's become something of a local sensation. Apparently he's seen the videos online. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness. Oh, well, I'm playing tonight anyway. Mr. Bellini is hoping you might extend your set. The critic made a late reservation, 8:30. Maya checked the time. It was just past 5, and she had promised to help Professor Foster draft an email to potential donors for the benefit concert after her shift. But she also knew how important this review could be for Bellini's. Of course I'll stay, she said. Bellini's gave me my start. I wouldn't be where I am without this place. Rose squeezed her arm gratefully. I'll let him know. The evening progressed like many others, with Maya efficiently serving her tables while mentally preparing for her performance. But tonight there was an extra charge in the air. The staff moved with additional precision, and Mr. Bellini personally inspected each dish before it left the kitchen. At 7:30, Maya took her usual place at the piano. She had learned to read the room over the months, understanding what style of music suited different crowds and moments. Tonight, the restaurant was filled with a mix of regulars and new faces, all creating a warm, expectant atmosphere. She began with light, melodic pieces that complemented the dining experience without overpowering conversation. As dishes were cleared and desserts were served, she transitioned to more complex compositions that rewarded closer listening. At 8:20, Mr. Bellini caught her eye and subtly pointed to a table being prepared in the corner, a good spot with a clear view of both the restaurant and the piano. The critic would be arriving soon. Maya nodded in understanding and continued playing, pushing away thoughts of being judged or evaluated. Instead, she focused on the music itself, on the joy of creation and expression that had become central to her life again. At 8:30, a middle-aged man in a well-tailored suit was shown to the corner table. He carried a small notebook and had kind eyes behind stylish glasses. Maya didn't change her playing or try to impress him. She simply continued the piece she was working on, letting the music speak for itself. As the evening continued, Maya extended her set as requested, playing well past her usual hour. She noticed the critic sometimes writing in his notebook, sometimes simply watching her with a thoughtful expression. Once their eyes met, and he smiled appreciatively before returning to his meal. By the time Maya finished playing, it was nearly 11. Her fingers were tired but satisfied, the pleasant ache of work well done. As she stood to take a brief bow, a habit she'd developed since performing at the Blue Note, the restaurant burst into applause. The critic joined in, nodding to her with what seemed like genuine respect. As Maya stepped away from the piano, she saw him speaking intently with Mr. Bellini, who was beaming with pride. In the staff room, Maya checked her phone and found messages from Professor Foster and Richard at the Blue Note, both confirming plans for the benefit concert. They had secured a date just 2 weeks away, giving them little time to prepare but enough to raise funds before the summer program began. As she gathered her things to leave, Mr. Bellini appeared at the door. "The critic loved you," he said, his face glowing. "He said your playing transformed the entire dining experience. He's including a special section about you in his review." Maya felt a rush of happiness. "I'm so glad. Bellini's deserves the recognition." Mr. Bellini shook his head. "You deserve it too, which is why this is bittersweet." He took a deep breath. "Rose told me about the summer program." "You'll be leaving us?" "Just for 6 weeks," Maya assured him. If you'll hold my job." Mr. Bellini laughed. "Your job? Maya, there will always be a place for you here. Whether serving tables or playing piano or both. This is where you started your journey back to music. We are family now." 2 weeks later, Maya stood on the stage of the Blue Note, facing the largest crowd she had ever played for. The benefit concert had sold out within days of being announced. Regulars from Bellini sat alongside students and faculty from City College, and jazz enthusiasts who had become fans of her Thursday night performances. In the front row, her mother watched with tears of joy and pride. They had struggled together through the hard years, supporting each other through illness and financial hardship. Now they were sharing this moment of possibility and promise. As Maya addressed the audience, she found herself thinking about the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. "6 months ago, I was just a server at an Italian restaurant," she began. "I had put away my dreams of music years before. But one night when the regular pianist couldn't make it, I sat down at the piano and played. That simple act changed everything." She looked out at the faces watching her, Professor Foster, who had seen her potential and helped her develop it, Rose and Mr. Bellini, who had supported her from the beginning, Richard Wilson, who had given her a chance to perform professionally, Loretta and other musicians who had welcomed her into their world, and so many others who had become part of her story. "Tonight isn't just about raising money for a summer program," Maya continued. "It's about recognizing that sometimes our deepest passions don't disappear when we set them aside. They wait for us, patient and faithful, ready to be rediscovered when the time is right." She sat down at the piano, her fingers poised above the keys. "This first piece is something new, something I've been working on. It's called The Server's Song." As Maya began to play, she poured everything into the music, the years of longing, the joy of rediscovery, the gratitude for second chances, and the hope for what lay ahead. The melody told her story more eloquently than words ever could, speaking of ordinary days transformed by extraordinary moments. When she finished, the audience rose to their feet, applauding with genuine emotion. Maya stood and bowed, no longer the nervous server who had reluctantly agreed to fill in one night, but a confident musician embracing her gift and her future. The benefit concert raised enough money to cover her remaining expenses for the summer program, with some left over to establish a small scholarship fund for other non-traditional music students. On her last night at Bellini's before leaving for the summer program, Maya wore her server's uniform one last time, moving between tables with the same efficiency she had always shown. But now, customers greeted her by name, sometimes asking for autographs on their napkins or menus. When it came time for her to play, Mr. Bellini asked for everyone's attention. "Tonight is bittersweet for us at Bellini's," he announced. "Our Maya is leaving for a prestigious summer music program tomorrow. But she has promised to return to us and we will be here waiting." He raised his glass. "To Maya Reynolds, who reminds us all that it's never too late to rediscover our passions and follow our dreams." As the restaurant joined in the toast, Maya caught sight of a new server, a young woman watching the piano with longing in her eyes. Maya smiled, recognizing that look. Perhaps there were other hidden talents waiting to be discovered, other stories waiting to unfold. She sat down at the piano one last time at Bellini's, not as just a server who happened to play, but as herself, Maya Reynolds, a musician who had found her way back to her true calling by the simple, brave act of touching the keys when the moment presented itself.